All right, in my last video, I did a couple different views of the skull. I think I did side views. I did superior view of the skull, which we left off with this picture right here. I touched on inferior, but didn't get a whole lot into it. And then I did an internal look at the skull. So I'm going to start back here with the superior view, just review a couple things. Remember, I have these sutures, these areas where those bones of the skull are interlocking, this sawtooth looking joint. Now we call it a joint, but it is immovable. Now, one part of your front page is what is a fontanelle? I really want you to look up what a fontanelle is. Those fontanelles are basically what we see in a baby's skull. When these things haven't completely formed, remember these are going through intramembranous ossification. There's these soft spots. Those soft spots are those fontanelles, and we'll look at some pictures of those together as a class. Internal view, I talked a little bit about these things. I'm going to get more into the sphenoid and the ethmoid today. Let's look at the inferior view a little bit more specific for a moment. First of all, again, we're seeing a lot of the same bones that we've seen before, and we're going to take a look together at these foramen, or I'll post a video of these foramen. A lot of different foramen in the skull, and again, a foramen is just a hole. Basically, it's a hole for blood vessels, nerves, things like that to pass through the skull, probably to get to the brain or innervate different areas of the skull. So let's start up here, the hard palate, the soft palate. You have two bones that make up the hard palate. The palate, hard palate is a bony structure in the roof of your mouth. Okay, so if you look at the front of the hard palate or the anterior portion of the hard palate, that's the maxilla. Remember, the maxilla is that part that makes up the area just above your mouth. So the anterior portion of the hard palate is the maxilla. The posterior portion of the hard palate are these things called the palatine bones. So there's actually two of them. They're L-shaped bones. And you know, if you're thinking of the L, kind of follow my pointer here to here. That's kind of an L-shaped bone. Those two things help form the hard palate, help form the posterior hard palate. So those two make up the hard palate together. Now, if I'm looking on the maxilla, there's this thing called the incisive fossa or incisive foramen. These things are, this again is just another hole that allows nerves and blood vessels to get to our upper jaw and give us feeling and keeps that area alive. Going down here, I have this part here, and it's not labeled on the page, but this is the zygomatic arch. It's labeled on your page in your notes. Zygomatic arch is made of two things: the zygomatic bone and the temporal bone. Okay, so I know I've gone over this in a previous video, but this is called the zygomatic process. So it's a part sticking from the temporal bone forward. And this is called the temporal process. It's a part of the zygomatic bone sticking backward. Okay, and those two things make this zygomatic arch. And if you're holding a skull in the classroom, take a look at it. You'll see that a portion of the mandible actually fits its way up into this zygomatic arch, and that's where some muscles come through, allow your jaw to we have the vomer here in the middle. The vomer, that's the thing that helps form that portion, that bottom portion of our nasal cavity, the middle portion of our nasal cavity. The mandibular fossa, okay, this little depression here, that's what the mandible fits into. That is where that joint is formed, the temporomandibular joint. That's how your jaw is moving. Styloid process, we've talked about that one in the past. Mastoid process, remember, those are both part of the temporal bone. You can see how far the temporal bone goes into the head here. Really extends pretty far, close into the head. Let's see, what other things on here have I not talked about? I don't want you guys to worry about like the external occipital crest and the protuberance and stuff like that. And we'll go through together things that you might be able to cross out. Take a look at this guy. This is the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum is a huge hole in the bottom of the skull. That is what allows your brainstem to exit the skull, and that's your connection between your brain and your spinal cord. And really, I mean, that's a huge part of our communication between the brain and the rest of the body. On either side of the foramen magnum, I have the occipital condyle, so there's one on either side. When you're holding a skull, notice that these things are convex, meaning that they kind of round it out because they're going to sit on top of our very first vertebrae, which is called our atlas. Okay, and that's where the our skull articulates with our vertebral column. Moving up through here, remember I told you I'm going to go through these foramen with you. And then the sphenoid. Again, I want to point out how big the sphenoid is and the span that it takes to get from one area, or excuse me, from one side of the skull to the other. And you see the maxilla there as well. Posterior view. Not a whole lot new on this view for us. Okay. One thing I'll notice, remember you have the sagittal suture between our two parietal bones. You also have the lambdoid suture between the occipital bone and the parietal bones. Notice the occipital condyles down here. This isn't it's kind of odd to look at this with the teeth, but understand that you're looking at this from the back. So this is the back of the teeth and the back of the mandible. And you can see the mastoid processes sticking out here. Remember, that's attachment for the bones of, the muscles of the neck, So yeah, that's about it for the posterior skull. We can cross out this nuchal line and the protuberance, although you can feel your external occipital protuberance in the back of your head. Run your fingers along the back of your head until you feel this big old bump back there. That's that external occipital protuberance. Other than that, with my next video, I'm going to start going through some individual bones like the sphenoid and the ethmoid and the mandible.